forward. Well, welcome you guys. We are so thrilled to have Miss Becky Upchurch with us today because not only is she an amazing person, but she is an amazing coach as well. And so let me just share with you what she's going to talk to us today about is the fears keeping you stuck and how to overcome them. Becky Upchurch helps professional women who feel like there's not enough time to do it all and who are tired of just going through the motions. Identify what matters most to them and create a strategy to achieve it so that they thrive in their careers, deepen their relationships, and live lives that lighten them up. Yes, girls. Both clients and audiences love Becky's ability to get to the heart of the matter in relatable ways that balance raw, honest, and kindness and levity to inspire change. In 2019, that is, Becky founded the Women's Growth Circle. If y'all don't know what that is, click and find it. A community that provides inspiration, resources, and support to empower growth-minded women to create the change they want for their lives. Becky believes that the fastest and the best way to achieve your goals by managing your mindset and trusting in your ability to create sustainable change. She strives to accomplish this in her own life through her motto, love self and serve others. And that's a great motto. So Becky, without further ado, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I'm gonna, can you let me share my screen and I'll pop up some slides for you guys so you can kind of follow my stream of thought. Always got to have slides when I present because if you're a squirrel brain, anybody else in the room who's a squirrel brain, it helps to keep you on track. So we will have some things to keep us on track here. And let's see. We are going to go into, all right. So we're going to start off with a quote. We're going to dive right in and we'll have some time to kind of talk as we go through this and we'll have time for questions at the end. But I want to start us off with a quote from Nelson Mandela. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. And I'm sure we're all familiar with that, you know, that the bravery is not about not being afraid. It's about feeling the fear and doing the thing anyway. And that's a really great attitude and perspective to have, to say that, you know, it's not about not having the fear. It's about being able to triumph over the fear. That's all well and good. But just saying that is not enough, because if I tell you like, oh, just, you know, feel the fear and do it anyway, you know, make peace with the fear. Okay, well, that's great, but how do I actually do that? So what we're going to talk about today are 4 kinds of fear that keep people stuck, and then 7 strategies that you can use to overcome them. So fear number 1 is fear of failure. And I think this is, I put this first because I think this is probably the most common fear that I see with people. It's, you know, looking at something you want to do and thinking, what if it doesn't work out? And since everybody, you know, this is all, you know, everybody here is in business or working on starting a business, that's a perfect example. Somebody who says, you know what, I have this business idea, but I'm not sure if it's going to work. And what if it fails? And what if I spend all of this time and energy and money and, you know, mental and emotional and energetic investment, and then it doesn't work out? So that is an example of fear of failure. When we experience that fear of failure, we're going to talk in a minute about what happens. Fear number 2 is fear of rejection. And you'll notice that all of these fears are kind of in the same family. I kind of think of them as siblings. So fear of rejection can be very similar, except this is more about not just engaging in something, it's more about how am I going to be received? So this might be, I don't want to show up at a social event where I don't know a lot of people because I'm afraid no one will engage with me and I'll feel rejected. If you're somebody in the dating world, it might be, oh, I don't want to put myself out there on a dating app because what if I don't get any matches? Or what if I ask someone out on a date and they reject me? Or if you're someone in business, you might say, well, I really want to work with this person, but I don't want to actually say, hey, I want to work with you. Would you like to work with me? Because what if they say no? Or what if I invite someone on a sales call and they say no to me, right? So it's that fear of how we're going to be received if we choose to put ourselves out there in some way. Excuse me. Number 3 is fear of judgment. And again, this is kind of in that same family, but the distinction that I see is in those first examples, fear of failure, it's usually what's happening in my own head. Oh, if I do this and it doesn't go well, I'm going to feel this, that, and the other. With same thing with fear of rejection. Well, if somebody says no, when I put myself out there, I'm going to have these thoughts about myself. With fear of judgment, it's a little bit different because yes, we're afraid of something negative happening, that negative consequence, but we're actually not afraid of, well, we're afraid of our own thoughts, but we're afraid of our own thoughts as we imagine other people's thoughts to be. So we're thinking about, well, what's that person going to think about me? Or what's that person going to say about me? So let's say I do start a business. And maybe somebody thinks it's a stupid idea and they're going to go, well, that's a really stupid business. And then I'm going to feel judged. I'm going to feel a certain way about that. Maybe it's going to shake my confidence. Or maybe something I try doesn't go well. And I feel like, let's say even something as simple as I go to a potluck and I make something and it doesn't taste good, or I'm looking around and everybody else's food is like so fancy. Everybody's a chef. And then I brought something and I feel like, oh, they're probably judging me because mine's not as fancy or whatever it may be. Again, it can be something very, very simple, but once we attach the idea that people are judging us, it can be a really paralyzing fear. And fear number 4 seems a little bit different, but stick with me because I'm going to explain to you how it relates back. Fear number 4 is the fear of missing out. And this is an important fear to look at because at the end of the day, this is something that can really impact our mental focus. So if I'm afraid of missing out on opportunities, whether it be business opportunities or social opportunities, I may find myself saying yes to things that I don't actually want to do. And that has a negative effect in a couple of ways. First of all, I'm going to show up and potentially be unhappy. So I'm hurting myself. I'm probably also not showing up as my best self, which is impacting other people. And then also what ends up happening is it's taking my time and attention away from other things that I want to be able to do, but am not able to do. So what do these fears have in common? You'll notice when you are afraid of failure, when you are afraid of rejection, when you are afraid of judgment, and you are afraid of missing out, they are all stopping you from doing something that is important to you. So if I don't want to be judged by other people, and I don't want to feel rejected, and I don't want to feel failure, I'm likely to not put myself out there. Same thing with missing out. If I'm missing out on things, if I worry, oh, I don't want to miss out on this, I'm going to do things that maybe I don't have time for. So in every single one of those cases, I'm doing things that are taking me away from what I ultimately want, either by not taking action towards the goals and the things that truly resonate with me, or in the case of the fear of missing out, I'm taking action in the wrong places and doing the wrong things because of that fear, and I'm neglecting the things that actually matter to me. So I am curious to know which of these fears do you feel like is most common for you?
I think all of them, quite honestly. I'm sitting here going, yep, all 4. But most common, I think, for me is judgment, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else have that fear of judgment? Want to be brave? I've had them all. I'll throw it out there. I've had them all. So let's see.
Yeah,
I think-
yeah, sure.
I think fear of failure to me is connected to the fear of judgment.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Like, I'm afraid to fail because I'm afraid of what others are going to think when I do. And that's
Mhm.
probably deep rooted in my childhood. But
Yes. That's why I said they're kind of all in that same family. It's like they're all, siblings or parent and child, whatever the relationships are among them. They're definitely all interconnected. And I see in the chat rejection, FOMO. So as you can see, these are pretty common fears, and they're things that we all experience. So now that we kind of have them out there, like these are, in my mind, the main fears that keep us stuck in a variety of ways. How do we keep these fears from getting in our way, right? So looking at what do we do? First strategy is understanding the context behind fear. Understanding the context is really important because I think sometimes we look at fears. If you're anything like me, I know I have a tendency to do this thing where I will have an experience or I will feel something, and then I'll go, Becky, that's so stupid. Why are you even, if I'm afraid of being rejected, then I'll start being like, why do you care what other people think? And I start judging myself because I'm having fear. So it's kind of like a double whammy. Not only am I having the fear and the struggle and the frustration that goes along with it, but then I'm adding this extra layer of kind of shame and blame on myself. So understanding the context really helps with that, because it helps us to realize that fear is actually something that is part of our makeup. If you think about, the evolution of humankind, we don't have to worry today. I don't know about the rest of you. And, we talked a little bit about gardening. I'm not a gardener. So when I need to go buy things, when I need food, I can just go to the grocery store and buy food. I don't need to go out into the woods and know which berries are going to kill me. I don't need to be hiking through the wilderness and be hyper aware of my surroundings because there's wild animals that could, make me their dinner. But even though we have evolved to a different place societally, we still have that inborn fear response. And so understanding that when we're having these fear responses, that's something that people have always had. It just looks different because our environment looks different. So one question that I think helps with understanding the context is asking the question, how can I respect and acknowledge my survival instinct? So for example, if I have an idea and I'm like, I don't know how people are going to receive this, and I start noticing that I'm having fear of judgment, I can ask myself that question. How can I respect and acknowledge my survival instinct? And I can say, you know what, Becky, this is a perfect example of where people were kind of, predisposed to living a tribal-based life and to the need for community. You're wired for community. Recognize that this is an opportunity to explore that and say, okay, I'm afraid of judgment because I don't want to be ostracized by my community. That's kind of my starting point for understanding why I'm feeling what I'm feeling. Because acknowledging it and understanding is the first thing you want to do to kind of delve into, okay, now how am I going to address it more deeply? So the next strategy, the next kind of step of this is finding the source. I think very often when we have fear, it's like the source is my own brain, the source is my own mind. But I think it's important to ask ourselves the question, is this me or is it the world? And what I mean by this is there are times where I have a reaction to something and I can look at it and say, okay, this is a fear that I have because of this specific belief that I have or this thing that's important to me. But other times I can look at it and go, oh, that's not actually aligned with my values and my beliefs. That's something out in the world that I don't necessarily agree with, or that's something that doesn't originate from inside of me. It's something I've been socialized to worry about. I heard something that has always resonated with me. I think I've heard it several times, and it's like every time I hear it, it's like it's the first time I've heard it. And I never remember quotes directly, but it's something around just the idea of it's not our critics that sometimes do the most damage to our confidence. It is often the well-meaning concern of the people who love us the most.
Yes, girl, preach.
So if I say, I come home and I say to my partner, you know what? I've been working at this job for 25 years, but I decided today I'm going to quit this job and I'm going to become a professional artist. That's a pretty extreme example, obviously. And that person says to me, okay, well, have you thought about the fact that you'd be losing benefits? Have you thought about the fact that you don't have artistic talent? Have you thought about the fact that you don't know anybody in the art industry? I would expect a caring, loving partner to ask me a million questions about this decision to try to understand it. But if I start to take all of those things in and suddenly I'm thinking, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? It can have an impact on me, right? It can increase my fear. Again, that's an extreme example, but I think very often when we have people who ask us questions, so if someone says, hey, I decided I'm going to run a marathon, and they have a friend who says, well, have you thought about the fact that you've had a lot of injuries in the past few years and that might not be a good idea? Or, oh, well, I read this article about running and how it's actually not that good for you. Well, that person has the best of intentions. But if I start to internalize that as fear, is that me or is that the world? So really being able to look at, if I'm having fear around something, if I am feeling anxious about a choice or a path that I want to take, really thinking about what is the source. Is this something that's coming from inside me because my core values, like let's say one of my core values is being in community with other people. So if I decide, oh, I'm going to go on a solo retreat for a year, and suddenly I'm having all of this fear around it, I'm going to ask myself the question. And I might say, oh, actually, this is me, because it's an inner voice in me saying, this isn't a good idea because this isn't in alignment with you. And after a couple of weeks, you're going to start being really unhappy. So really being able to discern what is coming from me and my inner wisdom and my inner knowing, and what is coming from external voices. And again, there may be value in listening to both, but it's important to know which voice is speaking so that you can take in that information. And this goes back to what we were saying in the introductions about other people's feedback, right? Because there are some tools around feedback and how to deal with feedback. But in order to deal with feedback and use the appropriate tools, we have to know, is it feedback I'm giving myself, or is it feedback I'm getting from other people and internalizing? So the next strategy is to differentiate between fear types. And I'll give a little context around this. And if you've heard me talk about this before, this will just be a nice refresher. So there is an author named Tara Moore, who wrote the book Playing Big. And I adore her, and I've done courses with her. And she talks in her book about this concept that she learned about from a rabbi named Alan Liu. And I'm going to try to summarize it very briefly. And it's the idea that in the Hebrew Bible, there are two words that are used to talk about fear. And those words are pahad and yirah. And the way it's explained, and I'll kind of explain it in my own kind of layman's terms, pahad is what I think of as kind of typical fear, that fight or flight, am I in danger? I'm imagining something bad, worst case scenario that we think of when we think of fear situations. Yirah is a different way of looking at fear. And this was something that was new to me. But once I heard about this distinction, it made so much sense. Yirah is more the fear of stepping into something larger than us. It's kind of like knowing that we're stepping into a more powerful, more sacred space. And I'll give you an example from my own life. So when I first did a speaking engagement as the CEO of Higher Good Coaching, representing myself and my company, I was terrified. The funny thing about this is the group of people that I was speaking to was a fairly small group of people. And I had already been working as a coach and a trainer and presenting in front of much larger groups of people, even when I was very new in my role. And so I was experiencing a lot of fear. But here's the interesting part. When I think about fear of public speaking, most people, if I say, why are you afraid of public speaking? They're going to say things like, I don't know what to say, or I don't know how to, use the space. I don't know how to read an audience. What if I mess up? What if something goes wrong with the tech? And they can come up with a lot of logistical things around public speaking. What if I get nervous? What if I lose my place? To me, that's all like pahad fear, right? It's imagined fears of what could go wrong. Well, here's the thing. Of course, some of that always comes up just because I'm not one of those people that loves public speaking. But to me, those things weren't really all that scary because having worked as a trainer and a presenter, I had been in situations where technology failed or I lost my place or something happened. So I knew that I had the ability to navigate those situations. The fear that I was feeling was yara. I just didn't know it at the time, because I was realizing that I was stepping into a very powerful place, because even though I had presented before, I had never presented as the CEO of my own business. And I was presenting my own ideas and my own thoughts and my own tools and ways of approaching something. And so I was stepping into something that felt more sacred and more powerful than what I had been doing previously. So even though it felt like fear, it was a fear that could actually kind of propel me forward. So it was almost kind of a more positive kind of fear. And I think about this sometimes when you think about the feelings that come up in your body when you're fearful. I know for me, fear and excitement carry a lot of the same physical markers. So being able to differentiate between the types of fear that you're feeling can be really helpful in that if I'm feeling it and I'm like, okay, this is fahad, then I can say, okay, well, let me explore this. Let me look at, are they really dangerous? How do I want to address them? Whereas if it's yara, I might say, okay, well, maybe I just want to kind of sit with this and kind of be in awe of it and accept it and take it in and think about, the bigger picture. So the next piece I think is really important. And I also think it is counterintuitive to how we go about handling emotions. Stop trying to eliminate the fear. My experience as a human being has been that when I have a negative emotion, my natural instinct is to try to get rid of it as quickly as possible. And in my experience dealing with other humans, I would say that that is also what most people do. So I understand the urge to try to eliminate the fear. However, one thing that I have also learned is that it is the trying to get rid of the emotion that often makes it even more powerful. So the question that I would ask myself is, how can I make peace with this feeling? So not how do I get rid of it, but how do I make peace with it? How do I look at, okay, here's the fear that I'm having. Here's why I'm having this fear. Is it realistic? Is it not realistic? So again, I'll go back to the public speaking example. If you're somebody who doesn't like public speaking and you're afraid that it's not going to go well, you can look at yourself and say, okay, well, how can I make peace with this? Okay, well, I'm afraid I'm going to mess up. Okay, well, then maybe I need to come up with a contingency plan if I lose my place. Or maybe I need to practice a couple more times so that I feel better. Or maybe I need to have a note card handy to help me, guide me along the way. Maybe I need to do a little bit more text on my slides if I'm feeling kind of shaky or nervous so that I know I won't get lost, right? I can think about kind of strategies that I can use, but I can't do that if I'm spending all of my time and energy pushing away the feeling and just trying to not feel that anxiety, because it's going to come up anyway until we address it. The next one, be brave on purpose. Even when we are fearful, even when we are uncertain, even when we are anxious about what is going to happen, we can choose to show up for ourselves and our lives. It is a choice, and so we can just choose to be brave. And I think the question that really helps me with this is, how do I want to show up in the world? So one of my core values is showing up to educate and support and help and bring value to others. So I know that I am somebody who wants to show up in the world as somebody who is present. And I always say that, one of my superpowers is my ability to show up for myself, my life, and other people. And that is very important to me. So if I can ground myself in that, no matter how scared I am, I can say, okay, well, how do I want to show up in the world? Who do I want to be? And then, okay, well, what does that person do in this situation? And more often than not, that person shows up and does the thing, even if she's terrified. Another way to be brave on purpose is to think about, what is somebody who is brave in scary situations thinking? And how can I think those things on purpose and practice them in advance so that when I get to the scary situation, those thoughts are there? And I'll share a thought that I have practiced in my life is things always work out for me. And I would wake up, I would practice that thought throughout the day. I would practice that thought regularly. And then I don't even remember now what was going on, but something really stressful was happening in my life. And all of a sudden I was like, but it'll be fine because things always work out for me. And it was like, I had this light bulb moment. It was like, where did that come from? Well, it came from me practicing that thought on purpose ahead of time because I knew it would help me to be brave. The next tool is staying connected to your vision. The idea that when we are scared, the instinct is to pull back from doing the things that scare us. So we need something that's going to counteract that. So the thing that I use to counteract that is the vision that I have for myself and my life and my work. So if I am afraid, let's say I want to launch a new course and I'm afraid that it's going to fail. But then I say, well, my vision for my business is that I'm helping to educate people about their mindset and how to get what they want in life. So I need to make sure that I'm showing up to make that happen, right? So I'm going back to that vision and how is this choice going to impact my achieving that vision or not? So a helpful question for me is what possibilities can I open up if I stop clinging to this fear? And you'll notice it doesn't say what possibilities can open up. It says what possibilities can I open up, right? Because part of this process is really being proactive in deciding how we want to respond to it. And then last but not least is seek support for your journey. I, for a very long time, was somebody who wanted to do everything on my own all the time. I have always been fiercely independent. And so my default was to never ask for help. Thankfully, I have learned as an adult that we all need support most of the time, if not all of the time. I know for me, I have had support, from colleagues, from mentors, from therapists, from coaches, like you name it, I've probably had them support me. So the question for this is, who can support me as I navigate this? And again, this can be a family member, a partner, a coworker, a mentor, a friend, somebody in networking. It can be a professional who maybe has expertise in an area. It can be a coach. It can be a support group, a therapist, whatever it is that you're working on, really thinking about who are all the different people who can support me with this. And having the distinction to know what is the right support, right? It doesn't have to always be the same support, and really trying to design the support to fit the need. So who can support me as I navigate this? Who's already in my life that might be able to support me? And then if I don't have somebody in my life that can support me with this, how can I seek out someone? Where can I find them? Who can connect me to them? And really being thoughtful in the process, but taking that first step of recognizing that, hey, support is a normal, natural thing. And it's actually how most successful people are able to achieve the things that they achieve. They don't do it alone. If you look at most successful business people have quite a team behind them. So not having fear around asking for support. All right, so I am curious, and I'm going to post them all up. But of these strategies or tools, which one do you think you use most often or most effectively?
I'm gonna say that I'm brave on purpose. That's the one that I found works best for me, is identifying that I'm going to be terrified when I do it, but it's gonna be okay and I'm gonna do it anyway.
I love it.
I-
Things always
I'm
work
with
out for you.
Sarah. I'm with Sarah on that. It's definitely be brave on purpose. You know, I have a vision of where I want to be, and every time something comes in, not in the way, but an opportunity presents itself that scares the crap out of me, I have to remind myself there's somewhere you want to be, and this is how you get there. And it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. You just gotta do it.
Yeah. So that's actually a combo of 5 and 6, being brave on purpose and connecting to your vision.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say, Beth, is, brave on purpose, but definitely staying connected to my vision of what I want to accomplish.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way about staying connected to my vision. I think that's crucial for me, to keep that always in the forefront of my mind. And also important to me is understanding the context, not just in the general way, but in terms of myself and my own personal history and the situation, because I'm a fairly rationally focused person. That's important to me. And so those two are really important. And and I would like to add that seeking support, it's so interesting. Being intimidated by, for whatever set of any of those fears, for asking for help, for acknowledging that support is needed or would be very useful, is something that I want to work on. I'm thinking going a little more forward.
I love that you share that, because obviously, I work as a coach, and so people, they will share very deep personal things. And that can be something that's very hard and very intimidating. But I think most people realize once they can get to a place where they're able to, partner and share those things and work through them, it's like, it's like the unburdening.
Mm-hmm.
So then one other question, which strategy are you taking with you? So I think of this as something that maybe you're not doing, that you want to start doing, or maybe something that you don't do as much, or something that you're like, oh, I've never thought about that. That might be a helpful thing for me to consider.
I think I like the number 3, differentiating between fear types. I think understanding what's a real fear and what's a fear of the unknown or a fear of change, and being able to move forward based on that knowledge.
Yeah, that was a game changer for me, for sure.
I think I wrote a goal yesterday to seek support for my journey. I may not have worded it the exact same way, but it's already something that I had in mind as a goal for myself, to find the circle of people that see my vision and want to help me.
Yeah, that has been a game changer for me, number 7, because I sought out support like 6 months ago. And I think that weekly meeting with that person, just being able to hash out ideas and things and fears and all of it has been amazing. And for me, I think for today, the like differentiating between the fear types and quite honestly 3 and 1, and understanding the context in which that's coming from and why it's there and why it's so deep rooted into stopping me from what I need to achieve. So very cool, very eye-opening.
I am glad. A couple more things here. So I want to close us with a quote from Louisa May Alcott. I am not afraid of storms, for I'm learning how to sail my ship. And what I want to highlight here is, you will notice it doesn't say I'm not afraid of storms, for I know how to sail my ship. It says I am learning how to sail my ship. And I think that's an important distinction, because I think sometimes we feel like, and I think this is especially true for women, we feel like we need to know things, we need to have the answers, we need to be on top of things, we need to be taking care of everything and everyone. And just realizing that it's okay to not always know 100% the path forward. It's okay to 100% not know how to use all the tools at the right time in the right place, that it's a process and it's about exploring what works for you, exploring how you're going to move forward. So really thinking about, it's not about, oh, well, I don't have to be afraid because I know everything. It's about being able to say, I don't know everything, but I'm learning how to navigate my journey. And that's why I don't have to be afraid, because I know that even scary things are things that I can learn to navigate. So with that, as Melody said, the Women's Growth Circle is my Facebook community. And if you are a member of that community, you may have seen we have a challenge. Tuesday was my birthday. And one of the things that I planned to do for my birthday month was grow that group. I didn't post yet the numerical goal of how many people I want to have join, but it's big. You guys who have known me for a while probably remember I'm very go big or go home when I do challenging things. So if you're a member of the group, please invite some friends. If you're not a member of the group, we would love to have you. And I'm always available. You can shoot me an email or give me a call. And I'm going to